you know, what would be a good thing is to fully flesh out the whole Assad did nothing wrong. Because, you know, it's fun to meme something like that, but that also needs to be explained.
Oh, go for it.
So, basically context, Syrian civil war. So, it's been going on for, goodness, better part of a decade now. But how did this all start? So, where it begins is with hydraulic fracturing. So, in the United States, our oil companies invented this incredible technology to extract even more oil and natural gas out of pockets, basically using high pressure water to, knock it out and get it to pump up. So, what this resulted in was the price of natural gas in the United States toppled overnight, as did the price of oil. So the United States went, as many of you know, from being a net oil importer to a net oil exporter. We are now that once again. We have not been that since the 70s, when our conventional oil resources hit the peak. Hubbard's peak, which is fallacious because he did not account for the fact that there is oil that requires more more joules basically to extract, so it's less efficient, but it means that you're not gonna. It's not like a traditional Pennsylvania
get
oil
to the good
well.
stuff, man.
Okay. Anyway, so what that means is that natural gas has tanked. There's not much of a market for it.
Tanked.
So natural gas in the Middle East. So if you want to get it from the Middle East somewhere else in the world, what you need to do very often is you compress it into liquefied natural gas. That takes energy, and then you ship it. So you want to get it to the EU, which is cold.
We go over here.
You got to compress it, in the
wait,
Persian Gulf. It goes all
okay,
the way around the Arabian Peninsula,
over here.
and then it goes up to the Suez Canal. You pay the Egyptians their toll, and then you go up and you offload it in some port in like Italy or Greece.
Exactly.
So the Emir of Qatar and the King of Saudi Arabia, they said, hey, you know what? The Americans are killing us. The Russians are killing us. We're not making good deals anymore. We need to make Qatar and Saudi Arabia great again. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask President Assad in Syria if we can build a pipeline to Turkey through eastern Syria in order to pipe natural gas to the EU and undercut the Russians. So President Assad says, well, you guys have always kind of been dicks to me. And, well, I'm an Alawite, he says. And so Alawites are I'll explain that later, but they're honorary Shia Muslims, and now Iraq, because of the fall of the Hussein regime,
they identify as Shia's gender.
Because of the fall of the Hussein regime, they are they're now basically a Shia-ruled country. And then you have Iran, and so Iran and Iraq and Syria are like, hey, why don't we build a pipeline to the Mediterranean? And so Assad says, I think we'll go for that instead. Well, Qatar and Saudi Arabia weren't happy with that, so they said, hey, al-Baghdadi, we would love to send you troops and money and amphetamine, like tons of methamphetamine, so that your guys can fight for hours and hours. Ah.
It's fucking snowing, guys.
Yeah, in Albuquerque, that's a good
It's
thing.
a Christmas miracle.
Exactly.
In February. It's a February 24th miracle.
Well, anyway, so the sitting Secretary of State of the United States at the time that this was going on, so her basically her chief of staff and her best friend, Huma Abedin, is Saudi and she has lots of connections in the Middle East, and so Qatar and the Saudi Arabia donated tons of money to her personal slush fund, also known as the Clinton Foundation. And they also basically gave guarantees to donate tons of money to her eventual presidential election bid, which they made good on in 2016. And so, thus began the CIA doing things like making dead drops of money from helicopters into the night, weapons caches. So ISIS, they fight very often with 5.56 NATO rounds and AR-15 platform weapons like M4s, M16s. Whereas the Syrians are fighting with things like AK-74s and the 7.62 39 type rounds. That indicates something that, like for example, what did Senator John McCain do recently? Just yesterday or something?
He's like, hey, Syria.
He went and he met with the Syrian rebels.
Yeah.
And the Syrian rebels, yeah, there are different groups. So there's basically two groups. There is Al Qaeda and ISIS, or Daesh. Al-Qaeda has renamed itself. They try to rebrand as Al-Nusra, Al-Jisha Islam, but
They
basically they're the same thing as
Netflix
Al-Qaeda.
tried to do a few years ago.
Yeah, so so it's Al-Qaeda and it's ISIS, and they're battlefield allies. They do have differences. They don't agree. And then there's also Turks, because the Turks want the pipeline as well. That's why the Turks have been, throwing people in as well. So basically, what the situation that happened is that we were like, oh, we're all gung-ho supporting the rebels back in 2012. President Obama put down the red line. If they use chemical weapons, we'll put boots on the ground and throw out Assad. Assad must go. Assad must go. The Assad must go curse, because every single politician who said that is now gone, except for, Assad. Well, he didn't say that, but yeah, all the politicians who said that are basically gone now. And Assad is still there, and Putin is still there.
Oh.
So the sitting Secretary of State of the United States took bribes from foreign governments to orchestrate our involvement in creating a civil war in Syria. That is what happened. So Assad did not start the civil war. He's not some brutal, evil dictator who's hated. He's like this nerdy ophthalmologist who was practicing medicine in London.
Yes, seriously.
His in-laws live in London, and people protest outside their house all the time. His father-in-law is a doctor. His wife is a doctor.
His father, the original Assad, changed the constitution in Syria to make it so non-Muslims could be president of Syria. Throwing that out there.
Oh yeah, and so we should give a shout out to base Representative Tulsi Gabbard. She's a Democratic representative from Hawaii. She's a American Samoan, half, right?
She's also Hindu. She's not perfect, but she actually met with Assad. Because she's like, hey, you know what? We're going to try for peace in Syria and stop,
so she
messing
and
up
Senator,
Syria.
and former Senator Kucinich went out there to talk with them. I
think Kucinich just hangs out there.
So, thanks Obama for not getting us involved in the Syrian civil war on the side of ISIS completely. For the past few years, we've been doing the horrible thing of giving them aid with guns and money. Like, McCain was questioned about his contacts, I think by, what's his face, Chaffetz? And it turned out it was like 8 guys, like literally 8 guys that they were just like giving millions of dollars to, and ammunition and guns and grenades and so forth. Those guys were just like, they're the free democratic rebels. They're just giving it and they turn you over right over to ISIS.
Rebels. No. Yeah. No, but I think it was Rand Paul, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who was just saying how if we're giving money to people who are obviously, they're against Assad, but they're obviously associated with ISIS and Al-Qaeda, or Al-Nusra, or whatever the fuck they want to be now, they're just not going to have a good time. We shouldn't do this. And everyone else is like, no, that's not going to happen.
And
guess what? It happened.
So, spoiler alert.
It happened.
Assad is democratically elected.
No. Really?
Yeah. So he's called, dictator, but he actually was democratically elected. And in the areas of Syria that he has political control of via the military, now they haven't had elections in a while because of the war. He's very, very popular. Like,
I thought
very
they had
popular.
an election like 2014.
They may have, but and you know why Assad's popular in those areas?
Because he takes care of them.
Because those people don't want to fucking die.
They don't like getting murdered by ISIS just as much as the next person.
Exactly.
Also, Alawites. If we're going on the topic of Muslims, so you're familiar with Sunni, the really scary ones, and Shia, the Iran ones.
Well, they were really scary in like 79.
Yeah, it's so 1979. But Alawite is this random small group of Muslims that mainly only come from Syria and have a lot of weird non-Muslim traditions, like believing in a trinity and celebrating mass. And yeah, it's kind of weird.
They're like kind of like the Druze in Lebanon or something.
And guess
it's
what?
Kind of like
Sunni Muslims hate them. ISIS hates them.
Yeah.
So Assad?
Assad is a minority religious group. He's from a minority religious group, and he protects the rights and liberties of the other minority religious groups.
Like the Christians.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And so, it's just amazing how much disinformation there is that goes out. And you know what's hilarious? In 2012, back when the U.S. involvement was beginning, Jon Stewart of Comedy Central, he decided to play this clip of Charlie Rose interviewing him, and he was like, we should talk to the guy that we're thinking about bombing. I'm going to write down what I think he says. And of course, President Assad goes on very articulately, says, no, I think it would be a very horrible idea for America to bomb Syria. It would very much destabilize things. You'd be supporting the people who did September 11 because Al Qaeda is involved. And he says, "Oh man, I had it wrong. I said yes, please bomb me." And so when he says, like, you'd be helping Al Qaeda, the people who attacked you on September 11th, and he says, maybe we wanted to do that. Shit.
Yeah.
Even Jon Stewart was red-pilled on Syria in 2012.
And then he forgot.
It should
probably.
tell you something.
7-Eleven was a part-time job.